Hey, welcome. How to Scrum. This is Safra Aaron. Today I want to talk about how do you remember the basics of Agile, Scrum, Project Delivery Framework. Now, there has been a good blog on this topic, and you can find that under How to Scrum under the blog section. But today I want to record this video just to go over this excellent blog that was done just to emphasize how simple it can be to remember how the basics of Agile, Scrum, Project Delivery Framework. So let's start. So the way to remember is at a very high level is to remember the mountain BCO, so Mount BCO. And I'm going to go through these kind of acronyms, what they mean, and give some examples so that at the end of this video, you should be able to remember how to remember the basics of the framework. So let's get started. So what is Mount BCO? So if you look at the acronyms Mount BCO, it stands for mindset, the team, the building blocks, ceremonies, and the outcome. And I'm going to go through one by one each of these items so that you understand what they mean and therefore apply when people ask you, hey, what is the basics of Scrum Framework Project Delivery? So mindset. Before you talk about anything in terms of project delivery, and specifically Agile, you have to remember that Agile versus Waterfall always comes up. So what is the difference between Agile versus Waterfall? I have done a video on this. You can find that on, again, How to Scrum under the video section. But basically, Waterfall and Agile are no different. It's just the way they are executed. Today, in a normal, it has been going on for years, decades. Waterfall is just a set of steps that you follow, starting from requirements. Then you do the analysis and design. Then you build for those requirements, and then you test it, and then you deploy it. These are the waterfall steps that you do one by one in sequence. Agile says the same thing, but you have to do it in a very short time, in 2-week sprints. All the steps, from requirements to analysis and design, to build the code, test the code, and have it shippable ready. It's the same thing. It's just the way you look at it. It's just a mindset. And that's important when I say that Agile versus Waterfall is the same thing, but they are executed differently and the outcome is the same. So that's what M stands for, mindset. The next is the team. Within Agile, team that exists is the Scrum Team, which is a development team. In this case, I'm calling it. And on top of that, and this in development team consists of all the developers, the QA, the subject matter experts, BA, business analysts. On top of that, the Scrum Team or the development team are two key roles that must exist. The first one is a product owner, the person that is responsible to build the product incrementally with the Scrum Team, the development team. And that vision is in the product owner's mind, and we are building that at the end of it, at the end of the project. So they are a critical role to have. The other one that needs to exist as a key role is a Scrum Master, responsible for coaching, mentoring the team and everybody on Agile principles, making sure that people are following the certain Scrum Ceremonies. So this is important to have as that the development team, which consists of all the subject matter experts, cross-functional team. On top of that, you need the product owner and the Scrum Master. What's next? The building blocks. Scrum Agile has basics, things that you need to remember that makes the Scrum kind of feasible. We're talking about epics, stories, and these are things you're going to hear when you talk about Agile Scrum. People talk about epics, user stories, story points, spikes, and you think, what on earth is spike? Backlog, and so I'm going to talk about what they are. There's a very good again, there's a course I've done on the basics on the Scrum itself, but there's a free video as well on how to Scrum that gives you basics overview of Scrum. But here I'm going to talk about what are the building blocks of Scrum. Epic is the highest level you can think of that has underneath it stories, spikes, and tasks, for example. And the idea is that Epic is like a high level kind of a target, like a feature of a product, and whatever that feature needs to break down into smaller breakdown structures is called stories, which is like a single requirement. Spike is something that you need to investigate and find out, and task is like get an access to a server or build a server, etc. So you can see I'm showing you here the level 1 is the epic level. Level 2 is the stories, the spikes and tasks. And level 3, a story can have a subtasks. For example, if the story says we need to build the login screen, subtask could be, find out the credentials, login, the password limitation, etc. So these are the building blocks for the framework. Next is ceremonies. Ceremonies are very important within Scrum Agile. Everybody must follow the Scrum ceremony, and the Scrum Master is responsible to make sure that people follow that, and you have to set up a schedule that kind of follows that. So here I'm going to show you what I do as a Scrum Master. The daily stand-up, as you know, is a daily 15-minute stand-up for the team to touch point, to see how they're doing in terms of finishing the work within the active sprint. Then you have the backlog refinement, which you look at the backlog and you try to see all the stories that are prioritized product owner to see that they are clear, have the acceptance criteria, and have been estimated and possibly assigned to somebody if you can. And that happens on a weekly basis. Then you have the sprint kind of planning. So the backlog refinement, sprint planning, again, they go hand in hand, because once you refine the backlog with all the stories that are important, you need to move those stories into the next sprint and have that sprint started. So the sprint planning is all about having the story which have been refined to be the next in the stories in the next sprint. Then you do the demo once the sprint is over. You do the demo to the product owner, and the product owner has to give feedback to the Scrum team, development team, to make sure that they have built something that is going in the right direction. And if there's any feedback, that feedback is incorporated into the next sprint before that gets started. So the team is always taking feedback, pivoting, and then going forward. And the idea is at the end of the project, when all the items in the backlog have been completed, is that the product that they have built is actually the way that the product owner was forecasting. And then you do the retrospective. I.e., after every sprint, you have to say to yourself, what did we do well that we should continue doing so, and what can we improve upon as part of the next sprint. So this is the kind of Scrum ceremony that must take place for every project delivery, Agile project delivery. The final thing on here is the outcome. Why do we do this Agile Scrum approach? The idea is that you're going to get early feedback from the product owner. For every demo that you do every 2 weeks after the sprint is finished, the demo gives the opportunity for the team to say to the product owner, this is what we thought we need to do, and we've done it. Please give us feedback. If the feedback is positive, you continue doing what you're doing. If there's some changes to be made, you make that change. But you're iteratively building the product. So there is always a room for change. There's always a room for scopes creep. In Waterfall, once you set the requirements in the beginning and you start working on it, you'll find that there might be some requirement changes, might be regulatory compliance, etc. Changes need to be done. All those changes would be extra. So you need to do a project change request. Agile doesn't do that. Agile says the backlog is always open for anybody to add anything to that, depending on where you are in the phase of the project. So the idea is in this case, in terms of outcome, is that you're always getting feedback and you're always pivoting to make sure that you deliver the right product at the end of the project life cycle. So this is what Mount BCO stands, and this kind of repeats, rinse and repeat. So you start with the backlog, you take the top prioritized stories, you put into sprint backlog. The team says we commit to delivering that. Once they start the 2-week sprint, they continue doing the work, and every day they will touch base and say, hey, how are we doing in terms of finishing the work? And at the end of 2 weeks, they do a demo. And if the demo is successful, then they will put that into the finishing kind of a shelf, ready for deployment into production. So this process continues until we have the end product. This is what we mean by Mount BCO. Now, I hope this was very useful. If you want to see other useful videos, blog, free templates, please visit howtoscrum.com and always check for all your Agile Scrum needs. And I hope this video was useful. Thank you so much.